Yeah, what's cracking, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Prison Break Raw. I'm your host, the one and only Big JD. Go ahead, give this channel a subscribe, share, leave some messages or comments, hit the thumbs up for the like, notification bell to be informed on all episodes when they drop. Most importantly, if you enjoy this content, please feel free to share it. Sharing is caring. Share it to your family, your friends, your coworkers, anywhere and everywhere in your social media platforms. Let's get this raw and uncut material out there to the millions that don't know we are here. Little quick announcement before we begin this video. PBR Live will be held tonight, 8:30 Central, 6:30 on the Pacific, 9:30 on the East Coast, and 7:30 in the Mountain Time Zone. Don't miss that. We're going to get into a whole lot of things. We'll probably get some more special guest appearances in the comments section. I don't doubt it. But don't miss it. It's going to be fun. We're going to have a blast. But let's get into this right here, talking about prison currency. And it made it almost seem like I'm beating a dead horse or I'm touching a subject that many other people have talked about. Although I think a fresh new perspective on this and more information is probably necessary in order to clean up a lot of really bad jobs some people have done on trying to explain the whole prison currency system and the prison economy in general. What constitutes as liquid or product or, things that are in front of you that could be used to barter with as opposed to things that can't? What makes the best product that is worth something of greater value to, let's say, a store man or the ticket man or the dope dealer or the gambler or whatever it is? What is the best currency to use for this, and what is the only forms of acceptable currency in some systems as opposed to others? So going into the California Department of Corrections and Rehumiliation, for the first time, you will touch down in a reception center. Now, the only things that you are allowed to bring in with you there is writing material, X amount of photos, and all your legal paperwork. Everything else gets disposed of. Either you can mail it home, you can have it destroyed, or you can donate it. And when they say donate it, they mean they're going to give it to their workers that work in R&R. It's really, they're like scandalous weasels that work in there. And if you've ever worked in there, no disrespect, but that's the way a lot of cars look at those dudes that work in R&R, like scandalous scavengers and weasels that'll take your shit the minute it's thrown into the trash and don't even have the convict courtesy to bring it back to you and say, here you go, on the low. They keep it for themselves. If it's a white pair of tennis shoes that they could take back to the yard, they'll take those back. If it's a pair of like sweatpants or something they'll take those back. If it's any kind of unopened commissary items that somebody just brought with them for God knows what reason because you can't bring it in there, they'll take that too. Stamped envelopes, wow, it's like you just stumbled upon a fucking leprechaun's crock of gold for some of these dudes, and especially in this one case where this kid brought 100 stamped envelopes, because we're always told, bring stamped envelopes. Not so much stamps, but stamped envelopes. So this kid brought in 100 of those things. What did the CO do? He peeled off 5, handed them to him, and said, what do you want to do with these? Do you want to donate them, or do you want to mail them home? Of course, you're always going to say donate them, as if they're going to send those 95 stamped envelopes to Save the Whales, to Shriners Hospital, to Chalk Hospital for Children, or anything like that, or clean up the ocean, or the American Cancer Foundation, anything like that, March of Dimes, Salvation Army. They're going right to the scavenger inmates that work in R&R. It's one of the reasons why my car didn't want nobody working in R&R, because you're watching this dude steal your shit. You can't do nothing about it, but other people are probably going to want to, cause some issues with that clown on the yard once they ever get back there, or if they ever see him somewhere down the line. But stamped envelopes, if you can talk your way out of them, sometimes the CO will just give all of them to you, or he might give you an extra 15. You say, hey man, my wife is very needy. I need to write her all the time, or my mother's sick. I need those envelopes until I'm able to go to the store. I'm usually last draw. It looks like we're in first draw, whatnot. If your last 2 numbers will confirm whatever draw they're in, he might give you most of them back, but usually not all of them. So the minute you get in, you're housed. You're either going to go to C yard, which is all dorms, or you're going to go to D yard, which is all cells. One time I was able to go to the dorms. Most of the other time I was going to the cells. But once you hit this dorm, Your stamps will buy you shots of coffee. Back then, they still had tobacco. So one stamped envelope will get you a rollie. 3 of them will get you a Taylor, and a Taylor is like a hump, a Camel non-filter, which, some usually people don't sell those. But if somebody is selling Taylors, you'll get a Taylor for, like 3 or 4 stamped envelopes as opposed to getting a small pin or rollie for one stamped envelope. Shot of coffee, 1 stamped envelope. People don't want loose stamps. Now, this is the part in the reception center where people would say that Top Ramens is debunked as prison currency. Well, that's not true. Because in the reception center and in the county jail, Top Ramens is a huge mode of currency. In the reception center, you're usually only allowed to get like a case of soups. You have a limited draw that you can go to. I think it was like $45 or as much as I'm not even sure, man. I think it was like $80 or $90 or something like that. Really depends, but it was something low like that. And you can only buy like a limit of like 1 case of soups. Case of soups is 24 Top Ramens. Now, how long is 24 Top Ramens going to last you when you're being fed like children in a cafeteria in an elementary school? How far is 24 Top Ramens going to go? So it's a good form of currency, and it's usually used for, like, let's say, pinochle tournaments, spades tournaments, chess tournaments, the squares, where everybody puts their name on little squares and they draw numbers from 0 to 9 on the top, 0 to 9 on the bottom, and wherever those 2 line up, it'll be the last 2 numbers of the ending score of each quarter in the NFL or in college. And if you got 0-0 and the score ends in that quarter like 10-0, then you win. 5 soups, 10 soups, whatever's on there. And that's how it works. That's how soups are used. And they're a good form of currency in the reception center. I don't know why anybody would say that was debunked, but whatever. So, stamped envelopes. Now, when they took the tobacco out of the reception centers in 1998, this is when a whole new level of hustle and economy was born on the support yard or the A yard in either Delano or Wasco or various other reception centers where it's a mainline yard. And those guys will work in places like the laundry, they'll work in maintenance and every other support services across the whole institution. And they will work in retherm, commonly referred to as reburn. And we call it reburn because it's food cooked somewhere else. And they just throw it into like a big old giant oven and they reheat it up. Oftentimes they burn it, so they call it reburn. You'll be able to volunteer to go over there and help those people that are working in there. And that's where the tobacco's being traded. And a lot of times in that situation, the only currency that they'll accept is if it's a mail-out order, which you probably don't want to do because you'll be waiting for a long period of time. They want jars of Folgers coffee. 1 jar of Folgers coffee will get you a puck, like a Copenhagen puck of tobacco. Nice packed in there. Maybe they'll give you some papers if you ask for them. Most of the time you don't. It's just the tobacco. So you'll take that back to the unit and you'll use Miltex, unless you get papers, to roll those cigarettes. And it's pretty nasty to smoke cigarettes out of Miltex or out of Bible paper, but people do it all the time. And that's where the tobacco, then those guys will take it and they'll start selling that tobacco for, guess what? You guessed it, soups, Top Ramens. So that's usually the main mode of currency as it breaks down with the reception. Once you hit the main line, most of the time the currency that I ever seen was anything that was of value. So if you had a guy who was a ticket man in the CDC, a ticket man, or you had a guy who was a store guy or the dude that was selling dope, usually the guy that was the drug dealer was the one that wanted mail-outs, money orders. Nowadays, they made it a lot simpler with JPay. But back in those days, they didn't have JPay, so you had to wait for this money order to show up on somebody's books. And they'll get an envelope, and it'll say money order removed, X amount of dollars, and that's how that gentleman knows that he got paid for your drug debt. But if you have a guy that has a store, you have dudes that are running a gambling table or gambling, it's usually anything of value. So if somebody says like, I bet you $1, you're going to be bringing them back 5 Top Ramens. a pouch of a pouch of tuna, or back then it was a tuna can, which was about $1.99, or a bag of rice, which was like $1 or $1.50. Anything of value. Anything of value. It could be bars of soap. Anything that you get out of your package is a higher value because those are like more of a commodity in the sense that they're a rare item. Rare items from packages are worth more than the actual items that you will get on commissary. Works like that every time. And that's usually how the currency runs in the state. And it was always the way I seen payments being paid out, as far as like what was the general currency back then, was usually tobacco way back in the days. I know it sounds like an old cliche and you've seen it on movies, but it's true. Packs of Taylors, cartons of cigarettes of like Marlboros or Winstons or Camels or whatever was worth X amount of dollars depending on what they were valued at the store. They were marked up all the time. Pouches of Bugler, cans of Bugler, these things were used as currency all the time. Even single cigarettes you could sell for like 5 soups if you needed some soups, or maybe a tuna pouch. I'll give you a cigarette for this or that. And that's how it works, man. In the state. In the feds, much different. So in the feds, I would be willing to say 99% of the time, people want this. Stamps. That is your money through and through. Yeah, you could do where somebody sends money to your books. Usually the feds tend to frown on that shit because they're listening to your calls and you're talking about sending money to this guy, that guy, this guy, that guy. 9 out of 10 times that dude will get snatched up. But in the feds, you have whole dollar stamps, right? So whole dollar stamps is a whole dollar, and that's what it's worth. And then you have books of stamps. So a book of stamp would be like this, and a book of stamps is usually worth like $5, $6, whatever it is. So that would be $5 stamps. See how that works? The store guy, of which I was the store guy. Now, I didn't run the tickets. I didn't run a gambling table. Some people would turn their cell into a straight casino. And whatever it was, they'd be in there rolling dice, card table, whatnot. And the guy that had the house was the guy that was making all the money for setting up the gambling organization, the casino in there. They used a lot of these cats called their house the casino. Guys that worked in the kitchen that were bringing out all the food. Those guys ran solely on stamps. The ticket man, solely on stamps. The dope dealer, either on stamps or a lot of times mail out money sent to the books. But your stamps. So here's how it works with the store guy. With me, anything that you came to my store to get, and I had a pretty large store, man. At one time, my store was up there to be about almost $4,000 worth of shit. And I'll tell you how I stored all that in a minute, because it was a lot of product, a lot of things, man. So the store man, you're coming to my store, and you're telling me you're going to pick up this, that, this, and this, and that. I'm going to mark you down for all that. I'm going to mark it up 30%. So it's 30% on each item that you pick up. It's not one item for two or anything like that. Those are elementary ways of gaining shit from other systems. In the feds, I mark my shit up at 30%. 30% for anything you get, you are bringing me back 30% on top of that. So if you come to my cell and you buy something, it's marked up at 30%, I'm going to total it out. I'm going to send you a store list next week, and you're going to go to the store and you're going to get all that shit worth the value of your tab at my store. I'll either ask you for books of stamps, I'll ask you for dollar stamps, if I need to basically build up the bank. Usually like our car, whatever car, will have a bank. And that bank, we use it overall as like a trust fund to finance kiddies, to open up other stores and other units, to for other things that I can't talk about, all these things. That trust fund is for that. And I had a very large trust fund, man. I had shit. I don't even remember. We counted the stamps. We had quite a few, man. I think the largest amount of cash trust fund or bank stamps I've seen that was confiscated out of somebody's cell was something like $12,000 worth of stamps. $12,000. I know it sounds unbelievable, but we're talking about the feds. Some of these guys have hundreds of thousands of dollars on their books. Some of these guys are millionaires. So like $12,000 worth of stamps to some of these guys ain't nothing. And you'd be surprised, man. So, yeah, you had all these stamps, and in the store, what was even better in the feds is on NFL Sunday, I could sit outside of my cell, put my chair in front of my cell door, have a big old bucket of sodas, and people are coming. They're buying sodas for like $1 a piece, man. 3 stamps a piece, $1 a piece. 3 stamps usually even out to be about $1. But yeah, 3 stamps a piece, whatnot. And that's where you make all your money. When you're selling sodas, when you got nothing but sodas and you're selling nutty bars for a stamp, whatnot, or a bag of chips, so somebody's coming like, let me get a bag of chips, usually a $2 bag, which is 30% markup, and 4 sodas. And him and his buddies and him and 3 of his buddies will go and drink the sodas and eat the chips while watching the game. I had so much shit from learning how to work prison currency, the prison economy, that I had to outsource a lot of my storage to various other homies. Like 3 or 4 of my homies would have all this shit stored up in their cells. And that's the benefit to having a car, right? Because I could store my stuff in their house, in their lockers, and they're not going to sit in there and eat it all up. They are going to get a percentage for holding on to it, whatever it is I give me. Either they're going to want stamps. Most of the time they want stamps. Or they're going to say, hey, can I grab like maybe a soda a day or a top ramen a day or whatnot? Yeah, go ahead. Or if they ask me for something, yeah, go ahead. Just don't get heavy. You know what I'm saying? If you're that independent solo bolo, I'm going to run lone wolf type of guy and you got a store, you are asked the fuck out when somebody doesn't want to pay you. Because what are you going to do about it? Especially if it's some guy, let's say he's from a very large car. You going to go over there and beat him up? You're going to get fucked up. So usually a lot of the independent lone wolf, solo bolo type dudes don't really have a store. Most all the time, if they do have a store, they're going to have to go into partnership with somebody else, sometimes from a car, in order to make sure that there is an insurance policy put into place to where nobody will rip off that store. But if you that guy that don't want to run with a car and you don't like politics and all that stuff like that, I hope you have thousands of dollars on your books, because you will not be a store man and be successful at it. You could do the ticket. You could be a lot of independent dudes will be the ticket guy, right? Because that you need cash up front. You can't say I'll pay you next week. When you're running a ticket, it's cash up front. Or if you decide to set up a casino in your cell, right? You could do that. But as far as having a store and being an independent solo bolo guy, you were just asking for trouble. You were asking for trouble. You were asking for people to not pay you. And some people won't pay you. You know, it's just the way it is. They'll run up a debt with all the independent stores and never pay them a dime. So the feds, as opposed to the state, it's anything that is tangible, anything that is worth value in the feds, 99% of the time it's stamps. So if somebody has a nice pair of like Timberland boots or Wolverine boots or whatnot that they sell at one location, and you bring the boots to this yard and they don't sell those boots, and you're going to be the only guy with those particular boots on the compound, you're going to want to buy them, ask him how much. He's going to say $50. You're not going to show up with a big old giant bag of all these top ramens and beans and rice and coffee and everything like that. He's going to tell you, man, bring me $50 worth of stamps almost every single time. Unless he asks for store, he's going to want you to give him stamps. And that's it, man. I hope this helped you to see past the BS of some other type videos saying that top ramens aren't currency, because they are. Anything of value is currency in a state system, in the feds. 99.9% of the time, it's stamps. And when I say that 0.1% of it, usually means that if you got drugs or if you got something else, but 99.9% of the time, your currency in the feds are books of stamps, dollar stamps, stamps. And some dudes will have thousands and thousands of dollars worth of stamps that they're trying to off on the yard. And that's another one. You got $1,000 worth of stamps, you could usually off them for about half of the price, or maybe you mark them down just a little bit to about $600, would get you $1,000 worth of stamps. That's still $600 profit. It's a loss if you think about all the product and everything. But if you're some guy that's moving things, It's just pure profit all the way through. So there it is right there. Prison currency, the feds, the California Department of Corruptions and Rehumiliation. And that's how this shit really breaks down from what I've seen in my experience of over 20-something years doing time. Prison Break Raw, uncut, uncensored, no holds barred, not sugarcoated, not politically correct, all up in your face, slapping you with that dick of reality. And I'm out.